Hello everyone. In this workshop, we are building a basic decentralized application on Ethereum network. So what is Ethereum? It is a network of computer governed by a set of rules called Ethereum protocol. It acts as a foundation for communities, applications and organizations and digital assets that everyone can build and use. Smart contracts are used to create application on the EVM and their logic is guaranteed to be executed according to the rules defined by its code. So these are going to be the prerequisites to follow along in this workshop. You must know little bit about JavaScript and have your good foundations in React and bounties. So first 20 successful submissions will receive 5 USDD. To make your submission, refer to the Google form link given in the description. Okay, now let's start with the tutorial. First of all, you need to install MetaMask. You can install this by searching it on the Chrome Web Store or via the link given in description. You need to create your development wallet. Choose a secure password. Now you need to secure your wallet and save this private key in a secure location. Since I will be destroying this wallet afterward, I can show you the security phase. Now you need to enter the missing security phase here. So we have successfully created our wallet. Now we need to get some test tokens. For this demo, I will be using base network. So you can go to this Faucet. The link is given in the description. Here you have to enter your wallet address. Okay, so it is rate limit. Since you are going to deploy your address for the first time, you can get it from here. I will just transfer some of the test tokens from my other wallet. I've transferred some test tokens from my other wallet. You will get a similar Explorer link through this site and you can confirm your transaction here. Now I can easily add the base Sepolia network. Now let's move forward to the contract part. To create our contract, we will use Remix ID and you can get the link for Remix ID in description. And I will create a new workplace here. A basic one, okay, let's keep this name. So by default, we get these 3 smart contracts for a storage example, a one with owner, and the ballot. We do not need any of this, so I will just clear my workspace and delete them. Now create a new file. So for this demo, I will create a smart contract that keep tracks of the user that have registered in our smart contract, their name and their favorite number. I will just call it favorite number. Now before starting the logic for your smart contract, you need to define its license agreement. You can get the license agreement from Zeppelin or any public smart contract. So for our purposes, we will keep the license open source, which is the MIT license. We also need to define the Solidity version we are going to use. For our purposes, Solidity 8.20 is good enough. Okay, let's start writing the logic for our smart contract. So to create any contract, you need to use the keyword contract. And now we need to give our contract a name. Let's just call it favorite number store. Now we have to define a structure, the structure of data that we are going to keep. So for users, we need an ID which is going to be a number to keep track of number of users, the user's name, and their favorite number. So to create a structure, we will use the struct keyword. It is similar to how you can create classes if you know object oriented programming. Let's call it users. Now we need to enter the data types and the property name. For ID, this is simply going to be an integer. For name, it is simply a string. So our structure is ready. Now we need to create some functions to interact with it. So let's move forward. First of all, let's define all of the functions that we are going to need. Okay, we are going to need a function to create new users, a function to get detail of the users that are already existing, a function to update the details of user, and a function to delete a user. Now to store all of the users, we can use an array. So let's create that. So we have created an array of users here. So this is the data type. We can keep this variable private, which means only the function within the smart contract can access the value in this array. And we call it users. Now let's create a global variable to keep track of the ID. We can just call it next ID, which means the next ID for which the user will be created. By default, I will give it a value of 1. Now let's start with the functions. And we are also going to need a function that can find a user for a given ID. So since we are going to need this functionality in multiples of these functions, I can just create a function, a separate function for it, and we can keep it internal. Since this will be used again in the functions above, let's just create this one first. Now to create a function in Solidity, we need to use the keyword function. So, and we need to specify whether it will be a private function or a public or an internal function. Since we are going to use this function only internally, we can keep the visibility to internal. And this is going to be a view function because it only reads the state of the smart contract. Specifying this function view will help us save gas. Now we need to specify the return type, which for this is going to be integer. We also need to give a function a name. Let's call it find user. And since we will be needing the IDs as an input, we need to define our inputs here. Now for this function, we will loop over the whole users array which we created and return its index if we find it in the array. Now in case a user is not found, we need to provide a return message. to provide a return message, you can use revert, which signifies that there is some error. So this is going to be a quick function. Let's just say function. So to get total number of user, we can just return the length of users array. Return. Okay. So far we have made out two of the utility functions. So let's just comment it. Now let's move on to the functions that we are going to use to interact in our front end. First of all, to create a function, to create a user, let's just create the create user function. Now to create a user, we are going to need the name of the user and its favorite number and the next ID. So we can access the next ID directly inside this function, and the name and favorite number we need to take it from the user as an input. So whenever we are working with name, sorry, working with strings or array, we need to specify to use the memory keyword to allocate sufficient memory for its processing. So whenever you are taking string as an input, specify memory. Okay, so since we have created our create user function, we need a function that can return us the data about users that are already present in our smart contract. So for let's create a function get user. This is also going to be a view function, and for the return type we are let's just return all of these three: ID, number and favorite number. Also you need to use the memory keyword when you are returning data also. So to get users detail, we will take in the user ID, and for that user ID we can just simply return the data. Now for the given user ID we need to find the index in array, and here we will use this function. Let's say uint. So we can get the index by passing in the user ID that we get from the user, and then we can just using the index we can get our data from the array. So we are done with our get user function. Now let's move on to create the function that will help us update the values for any given ID. So uh, like we access the data using index in our get user function, similarly we can access data and assign new values for it. So let's see how we can do this. Now to update our user, we will need the user ID and the fields that we are allowing updates for. So we will allow user to update both the name and their favorite number. So let's take those inputs. Okay, so we have gotten all of the inputs. Now we need to find the index, and I will just copy this. Okay, so this is going to be ID. Now we just need to reassign the values for that user in the array. Okay, so our update user function is also complete. Now we just need to complete a function which will delete an existing user. So to delete an entry in the array, we can just use the delete keyword, and we can get index similarly. So to delete, we will just need the user ID. Okay, let's start that function. So we have successfully created functions for creating a new user, getting the details of an existing user, updating the details of an existing user, and deleting an user. So our smart contract is complete. Now let's just quickly test it in the VM environment here, which is provided by default by the Remix ED. So you just need to deploy here. Okay, so it is deployed in the VM. Just say name is ABC and the favorite number is 123. Okay. Okay, so our transaction has gone through. So we are able to create a user. That's good. Now let's get the details for it. And here we can also get the details. User count is 1. Now let's try updating the details. Okay, the user count was 1, so that's there. And for the name, let's say ABCD is our new name. New favorite number is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Simply. And okay, so this transaction is also gone through. And here we can see our updated values. So our smart contract is working as expected. So since there are no issues, let's deploy it into our testnet. So change this environment to injected provider by MetaMask. This is okay. After restarting, my MetaMask is working, and in the environment I can see injected provider. So let's deploy it to the testnet. Okay, I will just confirm this transaction. Okay, so we have gotten our deployed smart contract here. We can see all the functions and the address. Now keep this address in a safe place because we will be needing it again to interact through our UI. Okay, so since our smart contract is now complete and deployed, uh, let's move on to the front end part. So the front end is already designed. You have to go to this repo. You can find the link for it in description and just clone it in your local machine. Okay. So I have already cloned it here, and here we can see there are components for creating user, deleting user, getting the user, and updating the existing users. In the utils file, you will see all of the smart contract interaction code. This is the code for connecting our front end with MetaMask, and the functions are defined here for creating user and all the various functions. I will just install all the dependencies and start the development server. So this is a Next.js application. To run it, you have to enter npm run dev. Okay, so our application server has started and the wallet has been connected. So okay, so this is the UI. Now we need to integrate it using the utils folder. Okay, let me just explain the functions that are already present. So first of all, we have a connect with MetaMask. This you can use this function to connect your application with the MetaMask installed on user's desk Windows. We are using Ether's library for it. Now to get to know more about how you can interact with user's wallet, uh, you can go to the Ether's documentation, and we are using V6. In the getting started section, you can see all of the different code. So this is what we are using to connect our application with the MetaMask. And these are the functions you need to. In the starter repo, you will find that the components for create user and update user, and okay, so the component for creating new users, deleting users, and getting the data, for these they are already integrated. So I will just go over them quickly. We are using let's go to the create user thing. Okay, so we have just imported from our utils folder. We have defined states for name, favorite number, loading state, error, and success state. And this is our function to handle the submit. Okay, and here you can see we are making a transaction using the create user function. We are passing in the name and the favorite number, and if it is successful, we will just log out the transaction. This is the form on submit. We have defined the end of submit there, and these are all the functions to just update the state. Okay. Now let's complete this create user function, and now let's see how you can interact with smart contracts through ethers. We are going to need name and favorite number. So that is okay, done. Now just to make sure that the application is connected, we can just call connect with MetaMask again. Now we need to create a contract instance, and to create that we will need the deployed smart contract address and the ABI for our smart contract, and we need to put them in here contract refs. Let's go back to our ethers file. In the remix ID, in the deployed contract section, okay, this is our contract address. Paste it here, and when you go to the compiler section, here you can access the ABI for your smart contract. Just copy it from here. Okay, so we have successfully entered the contract ABI and contract address. Now we can create the contract instance using ethers. Let's call it contract. So we are going to use the contract method from the ethers library, and we have imported the contact address and contract ABI from the contract refs. So just pass in those, and depending on whether the function is a write function or a read function, we need to provide either signer or provider. Since this is a write function, we will provide signer here. So our contract is now ready, and now we just need to create a transaction. To create a transaction, let's call it transtx. So for creating a transaction, we have taken contract and then call the function that we want to call. And also we need to pass in the name and the favorite number. Now if the transaction is successful or if it fails, we need to console log to check its status. So let's just console log that. And let's just return the transaction object itself. Okay. So I will restart the server and check if our create user function is working. Let's say A B C D E in our name. Okay, let's just say Priyanshu. And favorite number, let's just say 7. Okay, so our transaction has been okay. So we have successfully created our user. Now, now we need to complete the get user thing to check if our data is actually being stored. So similarly for the get user, I can just copy this from here. And the changes that we need to make, our contact is going to be the same. And okay, so we need to create different function. So we need to change the name here. It is get user, and okay. So for the get user function, I guess we need the ID. Yeah, so we need the user ID for it. Let's just take that as input. Also, since this is a read function, instead of signer we will provide the provider, and instead of returning transaction we will format the data that is coming from it and return it in the suitable form. Instead of transaction, let's call this user. Okay, now this user object will have all the details for the user, but we are handling the data in a specific way, so we will change the return type here. Let's just provide an object. It has ID, name, and favorite number. So for the ID it is simply user and the 0th element from that array. Now now solidity works with big number which we cannot uh, use simply like this here. So we will convert it to string. For name it is going to be an integer which JavaScript can easily handle. So we just need to provide a user and one which is the index for the data. Favorite number is again going to be big integer, and since we cannot work directly with them in JavaScript, we will need to employ similar strategy here. Okay, I will just copy this, but the index is going to be 2. Okay, and instead of calling it user created, we can call it user details. We also need to update our variable, which is user. Okay, it looks good. Now let's see if we can get data in our front end. Let me just refresh it. Okay. Oh, nice. So we are able to get the ID, name, and favorite number using the ID of the user. Now let's complete the update user function. So the function is here, and when we go to the update user component, you can see there are no like states and function to handle button click, and so you have to integrate that function here, and also you have to integrate get total users count. For this, the states are here, and you just need to write in the function for it. So it is going to be very similar to how we are using the get user thing. And remember to change the response, which is going to be in big integer, to string, so you can display it. After you have changed it to string, you can change it back to a normal number in JavaScript, and by doing that you can work with numbers. And as mentioned earlier, first 20 successful submission will receive 5 USDT as a bounty reward. So there is a Google Forms link given in the description for this video. I will just open it here. It will be the first link in description. Here you can see some details like your name, your email, GitHub link for the repo, the wallet address in which you want to receive your bounty funds, and the contract address that you've deployed in the base testnet. And if you are able to deploy a website, you can provide it here. So yeah, that's it for this session. We will be conducting 2 more sessions, and in the later sessions the bounties will be up to $20 per person.